I'm just a roofer, I'm not really a public speaker, is when you look at that, you're able to affect it when you derail yourself, right? Delayed gratification is super important at the front end of your business. Say, hey, when I get better, my company gets better. So invest in yourself, invest in your mind. When people go want to start their own company, it's because they couldn't see a future. That's great. Keep going on that. Keep doing what you're doing. But now you got a new problem. My name's Dustan Biegler. I'm the owner of Apple Roofing, and I also run or host a podcast called Core Concepts. My background is I started roofing in high school, and as soon as I was 18, I started my own company, right? And I'm not, whatever I've done, you guys can do it, right? Like, I didn't graduate high school or go to college, okay? So I'm not any kind of genius. I've just learned a few strategies along the way that work. And I'll be honest with you, I learned very little, like my first 11 years in business, right? It took me 11 years to get to 5 million. And then I sold that company off and started over, okay? And then I learned a lot really fast. And it was a mindset shift, okay? I will credit Rodney Webb, who was just in there, with a little bit of that shift in mindset that I heard him years ago, and it made a lot of sense to me, some of the things. So I would encourage anybody to take on a mentor as they're growing their business, right? I do have a slideshow, and it's to really maybe create discourse, right, about what we're trying to accomplish. If anybody has a question, just, hey, say it, right? Like, raise your hand or whatever you want to do. But I'm just a roofer. I'm not really a public speaker. So when you guys interact with me, I love it, because I'm nervous as anybody is when they get in front of people. So I like that interaction. So don't be afraid to do it. I'm not really an original guy. I've learned everything I've learned from someone else, or maybe through a little bit of experience, right? Like, there's not just one way to grow your business. I'm going to tell you some of the things I went through that worked for us, but that doesn't mean it's the only way or the right way or whatever. It just worked for us, okay? It's a strategy, and I'm not saying it's the only way, okay? If you can use something that I tell you, great. If you like tidbits, take what you like, throw away the rest, right? Just to kind of get a feel for the room, though, who's a business owner in here? Okay, good. A lot of the room. Now, how many of you guys want to grow your business? Is that what your goal is? Okay, good. Because that's what I'm trying to go over. One of my biggest fears in life, I think, is going through life and not finding out what your limits are, right? I think we all are born with that, what am I really capable of in this life? And we really don't know when we start, right? Maybe we go as far as we can see right now. It's like climbing a mountain, right? You go as far as you can see, and then you can see further. And view your professional career that way, right? Set a goal, go as far as you can go, and then we can see further. So I wanted to talk about that. What we all got dreams, right? And who in the room thinks they have a obnoxious dream? Does anybody feel like they have this crazy height? Cool. Do you mind sharing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, 10 states, 10 locations, 10 states, each location doing 100 million.
I like it. Now, what he did there is he just told us what his dream is. So he kind of just held himself accountable, right? Now we're all going to be, where are you out of right now? Sacramento. Okay, we're all watching this guy. We're going to look him up in 10 years and see what the hell he's doing. Don't let us down. But, that's the first thing about having a dream, guys, is telling somebody about it, because it creates a little bit of accountability for yourself, okay? Now, second question I'm going to have for you is, did you write your dream down? Do you have it written down? And is it posted somewhere you can see it? Good. So when you write down a dream, it's now a goal, right? if you don't have goals set in place, guys, go at least go make a 5-year goal for yourself. Because what you're thinking about, what you're focusing on, is where you're like what you're gonna attract, right? That law of attraction. I don't believe in magic or any of that voodoo shit, but what you're focusing on is what you're gonna attract. And when you're starting to think about a goal, you inadvertently, subconsciously start making decisions based on that, okay? So verbalize it, put it in front of you, keep yourself accountable to it, right? And then when you have a goal, I like how he put his. He had 10 states and he had 100 million. Now you have to take that. Do you have a time frame?
10 years, there's 90 days, 3 years, and 10 years.
Okay, so have you worked that goal backwards? Okay, great. So what he's done there is he said, I need to accomplish, he's making a timeline, right? So he's saying, I got to accomplish this year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, right? You're creating goals for each year backwards. And what he should do is take that goal, right, his 1-year goal, and create a monthly goal off of that, right? And then create a daily goal. Like, that's how you hold yourself accountable, because there's 2 kinds of things you want to monitor in your business. You know, key performance indicators, right? But like, we have lagging indicators and leading indicators. And a lagging indicator is something like, how many sales did we do last month, right? Lagging indicators are great to know, but you really can't do shit about them, right? Like, it tells you what happened already. A leading indicator is something like, how many sales are we going to do next month, right? That's a little tougher question than like looking back at what already happened, but the important thing about it is when you look at that, you're able to affect it when you derail yourself, right? You start to recognize, hey, it doesn't look like I'm gonna hit my goal. And so what the things like you need to know in order to like answer that question might be, hey, what's my historical close rate, right? Because you want an educated guess, not just a guess of what your next month's sales look like. So if you know you've been closing at 30%, right, of prospects or whatever, then, you know, if your goal is 100,000, then you need at least $300,000 in your prospect line, right? And if you only have 200,000 in there, you can divide that by 30 and go, hey, you know what? We don't have enough revenue to meet goal. Like, now that triggers you to go, we need to go work on creating more revenue, right? Now you can affect the outcome and not just see the outcome when it happens, right? It's going to give you triggers to make you go take the action that you need to take in order to reach your goal. Does that make sense? Okay. To accomplish your dream, when I look back at you know, how we built our business, I think these are 3 things that are really, really big, okay, in order to reach your goal. Number 1, delayed gratification, okay? Number 2, processes and systems. And then 3 is leadership. And I'm going to say, you know, no matter what size company you are, you might experience this on a different level, right? But try to keep the same lifestyle you've had, right? You start getting some money in your bank account and you're like, man, you know what? I can now step my lifestyle up. I can buy toys. I can buy a cool car, a bigger house, whatever. Try not to do that, okay? Try to put yourself on a salary and stay there as long as you can until you're not going to starve your business when you want more money, right? Because there is a point where you can take more money, right? But you don't want to deplete the fuel that grows your business, which, you know, capital is what it takes to grow business. Growing is very expensive, right? You have to invest to grow. And so that's what I'm going to encourage you on this one is don't do this. Now, this next slide is going to make half of you guys in the room hate me. The other half might get a little chuckle, whatever. But this is a roofer's truck, right? And this is how I've tried to train my mindset around this topic, okay? You got a lift kit, you got lots of chrome, you got pretty fancy rims, right? That tells me, and it tells a homeowner, subconsciously, the same thing. They're looking at that, and subconsciously they think, hey, this guy likes big trucks, black smoke, big lift kits, right? It's telling them something about you personally, okay? And that's okay, but it also tells them you're probably a small company, okay? And when you get the steel rims, you know you got a fucking giant, right? Try to like work up to the steel rims. When you can get to there, you're a giant, okay? So when you would have bought that other truck, that thing probably costs, I don't know, you guys might know it costs more than I do, but it looks like a $100,000 truck to me, right? You probably could have bought 4 trucks that are utility, right? The steel rims. And instead of selling 1 million, you could have sold 4, right? So delayed gratification is super important at the front end of your business. Like one of the biggest things. They say, you know, in studies, like if kids can practice delayed gratification, it's the #1 predictor of success if they will be successful as an adult, if they can practice delayed gratification. I really believe in it. You guys, you know, at the beginning, you really need capital in your business, okay? Now, the second thing we talked about was process, okay? Now, process is something that essentially is you're going to be building around a tool like one of these, okay? These are a tool to build process around. And this is going to help you really scale your business. I know there's a plethora of different CRMs, okay? Does anybody in the room not have a CRM today? Do it, okay? Get it. If you want to grow, it's going to be your best tool. Now, I think a lot of us can probably say that we don't use our CRM to its fullest potential, right? So, like a bank, right? You only can really pull out what you put in. So if you're not putting the data in there, you really can't pull it out. Try to implement more and more to using that CRM, because without using it to its potential, you're not really capturing the efficiencies that it can give you, and the workflow management, you know, that it can give you. Let's see. You know, process is also the thing that like drives culture, right? When I think of culture, I don't think of like how much fun you have in the office. The best definition that I've heard of culture is the way things are done around here, okay? And so when I think of the way things are done around here in a company, to me that means does somebody come into your company, if you were to take somebody in your company, what are the expectations they have that the company has of them, right? Is the culture one of excellence? Do they have to show up on time? You know, perform excellently while they're there, you know, be a real professional? Or is it kind of a half-assed, you know, job? Is it a job or a career? You know, create a culture of excellence, I think. And by having process in your company, you know, they start to view your company differently. Like, I am a professional here. We actually have systems, right? Not everybody winging their own thing. And it helps everybody really level up. The next slide is leadership, right? And I really like what Jim Rohn says here. Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. And has anybody in here read the book called Extreme Ownership? Yeah? Great book, great mindset. I really encourage you guys to like think about maybe reading that one. It's really good for an owner. Because, you know, he teaches you in that book that we have all of these things that happen in our business, and we tend to, you know, as human beings, we tend to want to place the blame somewhere else, right? Like, who's ever heard somebody say, like, God damn, you know what, millennials, they don't want to work, they're lazy, like, it's hard to find good help. You know, things like that, right? Anybody heard that before? Okay. If that's something you're hearing, it's that right there is the definition of like an excuse, okay? When you read the Extreme Ownership book, he's going to teach you no matter what, whether you feel like it's you or not, take responsibility for it. Because if you can't take responsibility for something, you can't change it. Okay? As soon as you assume responsibility over something, you have power to change it. So ask, hey, why am I having a problem attracting good talent? Is it me? Oh my gosh. You know what? You can start changing things in your company by taking the blame for it, right? And that's what I encourage you as a leader, right? You're responsible for like bringing everybody in your organization and making them reach their potential. Just the same as you want to, level up, right? You want to do more things in your company. You have to replace yourself or duplicate yourself in some roles, right? So you're wanting to focus on bringing other people up and, invest in your mind. So most roofers spend a fair amount of time driving, right? Are you listening to Jay-Z or are you listening to an audiobook that can, help you, right? Like we said, you can't pull anything out of the bank that you didn't invest. I don't know how Jay-Z is going to make me any money listening to him, right? But I do know I can improve myself. One's more fun to listen to, but one pays, one don't, right? Think about it that way. I'm not saying you have to all the time, but start creating little good habits, right? Try to do it a little bit. And if you really get the right leadership in your organization, there's nothing you can't do. I really mean that. Like the bottleneck is at the top, okay? That's a saying. And what I mean by that is the bottleneck in your business is always you. Our businesses are limited by who we are. And when we get better, our company gets better, okay? Like, if I had the best leadership and all the right leadership, and I was better and could attract these people and train these people or whatever, why couldn't I open in every city in the US today, tomorrow, right? That's the leadership, and that's one of the bottlenecks that we have. But take that and say, hey, when I get better, my company gets better. So invest in yourself, invest in your mind, pay attention to like the things that you do. When you look at, an orchestra, the conductor is not necessarily the best trumpet player, right? We don't know him for that. Make sure you're giving your people like accolades for what they're good at, right? You don't have to be the best salesperson in your company. Matter of fact, you shouldn't be, if you want to get out of sales. Like, we're all multitasking in our companies. We're doing a lot of things, which doesn't allow us to specialize in things. So as soon as you start trusting people to like take on duties, you're going to be able to be the conductor, and you're really allowing, people to do their thing. So this is what like business looks like, and this isn't even, very in depth, but there's you and you're doing like all these things, right? As owners, we're all doing all these things. And even go more in depth, right? Like this, it doesn't even cover it all. This is just like a portion of like some of the things we do as owners, right? And this is what I would say is multitasking. And I want to say, like, as we've all grown up, we've been programmed to like think multitasking is a great thing, like a badge of honor. Like, I am a great multitasker, right? Let's change the way we think about multitasking. So studies show that, as you can imagine, when you're multitasking, you're not actually, there's no such thing. Let's change the verbiage right now. It's called switching tasks. Studies show again and again, you cannot multitask. You can switch tasks quickly, back and forth, okay? You can't actually focus on two things at once. The problem with that is it's a reduced efficiency, okay? It's you actually have reduced focus after you've been multitasking for a long time, and they say that it actually hurts your brain if you multitask long enough, okay? And it inhibits somebody from really excelling in their role, because when you specialize in something, you get really good at it, right? Like Henry Ford created the assembly line, and you want to think about your business as an assembly line where everybody has a task, and they can do that task, right? And of course, that's very difficult at the front side because you don't have people to focus on maybe every little thing in your business, right? But that's what building a team's about. And, you know, multitasking is, think about it as an anti-team mindset, right? It only takes one person to multitask. Does that make sense? And it's what we have to do when we don't have a team. So we want to build that team up as soon as possible, right? I liked this slide because it's really, really true. It really means a lot to me, like content-wise, because the way to get away from multitasking is to start specializing, okay? And this saying just really hits home for me. And I'm going to use somebody maybe half you guys don't like, but Bill Gates, right? Who had the idea to put a computer in every home? I don't know, but I know who did it, right? Steve Jobs did it. So like when we think about what's successful in business, it's not really like this great idea we have or this epiphany that we have that's going to make us successful. It's about how well you can lead a team. Who in here knows like Heath Hicks that has the catch-all system, right? Do you know how many roofers thought of that? A lot of roofers. Who did it? He did, right? Hell, I thought of it, but I didn't make it. It doesn't matter. Ideas are worthless unless you can execute them, right? So just maybe try to think about that way. And I think a team can look very differently to everybody, right? For me, the start of that was having a partner, right? Some people maybe don't feel good about partnerships, and that's okay. You don't have to. But for me personally, that's what it looked like. Like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but the principles are the same. Whether it's a partner or maybe a trusted person in your organization, like you actually want somebody that is gonna like argue with you probably. You want that different opinion, right? Like we get the most success when we get in front of a whiteboard and we're talking about an idea and one guy's tearing the other guy's idea down. And a lot of people might not like that, but we love it. Like we're like, hey, as soon as we get along, we don't have any like value anymore to each other, right? We're actually interacting with each other really well to come to the right decision because we don't really care who's right because we both have the same goal, right? We want to succeed. What that looks like doesn't matter if it's his idea or mine, but let's get to it, right? The other thing is, in order to grow, we have to always think about replacing ourselves. Okay? So I know when you hand off a duty in a roofing company, sometimes it's difficult. Like to trust somebody, right? Are they going to do it as well as I did? Am I going to share too much information? I'm going to use an example. I know a guy in the roofing industry, and he says to me, well, I do all the estimates in my company, right? And I said, oh, Jesus, that guy's a hard worker. Like, he doesn't allow his salespeople to do their own estimates. And I thought, boy, that is not scalable. And I told him that. I said, well, my opinion is you're never going to grow, right? You don't have time to go grow your business. You're busy doing estimates. And he's like, well, I can't allow my people to do estimates, otherwise they'll leave me. I was like, ooh, you know what? Like, what's the best way to find out if you can trust somebody? Do it, right? If you can't trust them, do you want them in your organization anyway? No, you don't. Like, when you really cannot think that way. It's very small-minded. When people leave an organization, it's because they didn't have upward mobility in that organization usually. When people want to start their own company, it's because they couldn't see a future with yours, right? And it's back to that extreme ownership. If you got people leaving your organization, don't blame it on the people. look at yourself again, right? And say, hey, why are people leaving my organization? Why aren't they seeing the value, right? Rodney just kind of talked about that in his thing, and I buy into that. Like, try to make millionaires in your own company, right? Like, that's what you want to do. Who doesn't love writing a big check to their people, right? That's one of the things we really love. We've got our business structured so we have bonus systems and things like that. And I love being able to go out and write a big check, you know? When somebody accomplishes something great, I love being able to hand that out, you know, in front of the whole sales team and create a dopamine dump, right? Like, everybody gets a little high off that. So the other thing about wanting to grow, everybody said they wanted to grow in here. And the reason I think we want to do that, right, as owners, besides providing upward mobility for our people, right? Because if they don't see that upward mobility, like we just said, that's when they want to leave. They can't see it as a career. But besides that, we've all, including ourselves, got to feel some sort of progress in our life, right? Tony Robbins talks about this. He says, if you don't have some sort of progress in your life, you don't have happiness. He says progress is happiness. So when people ask him what's happiness, he says progress equals happiness. And that doesn't have to necessarily be in your career, right? It could be progress in your relationship or your family or whatever, right? Like, there's a lot of areas in your life you can experience progress, but when somebody doesn't have any progress in their life, that's when they start like feeling depression or, you know, suicidal or whatever, right? Like, you have to have some sort of progress in your life. And you can't progress until you replace yourself. So always replace yourself, you know, with somebody from in your organization. You know, when people start in our company, I tell them, you know, day one, what I really want for you is I want you to replace me. I want you to take my job, because if somebody can take my job, I can go work on something else, right? Like, bigger to grow the company. I think that's a big deal. And really, you know, money, if you have success in your career, it's going to allow you to have success in any other place in your life, right? Like, if you're a very charitable person, then now you can be a more charitable person, right? It just amplifies who you are. If you're an asshole, now you're a rich fucking asshole, right? Now you're a bigger asshole than you were. So you can be more of something good or you can be more of something bad, right? When we look at most companies, right, under 1 million, this is what it looks like when we start. If you were to have an org chart, right? Who in here has an org chart in their business? Good, good. I would encourage everybody to actually make an org chart, no matter where you're at, because it kind of helps you think about the way you're going to structure your business, okay? And when you look at this kind of company, you know, it probably never gets better than this for your bottom line, right? You don't have a lot of overhead. You're probably not renting an office. You're running really lean, you know, and things are pretty simple, but your bottom line's great, but your top line can't grow past a certain point, right? Like, you can only do so much. These are the two positions that most people take when they decide to grow, right? They have sales and receptionists. And when you do take that step and grow in your company, what you do is you are now starting to specialize, right? Now you have people specializing in sales, and now you've lost one of your tasks, right? Like, you used to answer all the phone calls. Now you've lost one of your tasks. So you have a specialist now that answers the phones, and you don't have to do it. Guess what? She's going to do a better job than you anyway. You know, you're always in a sales call, the phone rings, you miss it. You don't know what you missed, you know? So as you start to grow, you can start to afford to replace yourself and not multitask, right? But the problem at this size is when you make these initial steps of growing, you lose a few duties, right? You don't have to answer the phone anymore. You don't have to do all the sales or all the operations, but you have to now recruit. You have to interview. You have to train, right? Now you're managing people. Now you have HR. whatever level that is in your company, right? But you gained some things. Now you're managing people, but you did lose some things too, right? So this is probably one of the harder steps, I think, to grow, is that first step, right? Because now you've got increased overhead that you didn't have. You've still got a ton of multitasking going on, right? Because you're still doing a lot in your company. Marketing, blah, blah, blah. Don't need to go into that. You guys know what you're doing. But you've taken on additional things that you've never had to do before, right? Who's ever messed with payroll before they had a team, right? You just got to go figure this stuff out. So it's additional stuff. Now, as we continue to grow, though, you want to, in my opinion, this last size that we talked about is like the tough stage, right? That $1 to $5 million mark, it's very difficult. It's probably the hardest because you don't have the simplicity of being an owner, but you haven't fully taken advantage of like getting more specialists in your company, right, to help you with these things. And so it takes a lot of time and money, right? Your bottom line's decreasing. So then when you kind of step into this area, you're hiring a few more positions. Now you have a sales manager, right? Like you can kind of step back from the sales a little bit, I think. And you know, things are looking a little simpler, okay? But anyway, what I really recommend to really make sure you're keeping yourself accountable to specializing instead of multitasking is when you create a position, right? You want to take all of the duties that person should do and assign it to that card, right? And you want to think of everybody within that card as doing the same thing. So then now you're kind of creating a process, and you can monitor that, you know, through your CRM. But as you continue to grow, right, it might start looking like this, like, but at some point you're going to say, hey, who does this, who does this, who does this? Like if you notice in this organizational chart, and this is one of ours that was, you know, a little further back, but we really try to specialize right down to even into the sales department. You know, the more you can specialize, the more success that people are going to experience within your company. So if you look at the sales part of this, like, for example, a retail insurance salesman cannot go sell property management, right? And vice versa. Or a new construction person can't go sell an insurance job or a retail job, right? Like the needs are different, you know? And if you want people to really perform really well in their space, as you grow, you can start specializing more and more and more, right? Because think about it as an owner right now, like you're handling so many things between marketing and, I don't know, SEO and operations, right? Like there's nothing that you feel like, you can't say you're doing the best that can be done at anything, right? Because you simply don't have time to be the best at everything. As soon as you start getting specialists in place, they can start being the best in their space, okay? Because you don't have time. When I think about the ceilings we experienced as we grew, you know, I think 1 to 5 million, you're figuring out how to create revenue at this point, right? Like that's what you need to focus on because that's what keeps the lights on, right? So you're really focused on your sales process. Like how do we acquire more sales, attract more customers, get more calls, close more deals, right? And that's where your head probably should be, okay? But as soon as you've probably reached about the $5 million mark, you figured something out that was working, okay, in sales. And that's great. Keep going on that. Keep doing what you're doing. But now you got a new problem. Like when owners typically expand in their sales, what they do is they duplicate a position, right? Sales position, sales position, sales position. What they didn't plan on is maybe some of the production issues that might come in, right? Like that's your next thing. Now you have to start having process. Like a production, how many people in this room have a production manager? Okay, Who in here has ever experienced a sales team and a production team kind of doing this a little bit? Like, right? And I'm going to say, when you have that issue, I really think what's happening a lot of the time is the sales guys go, the production guys suck. You know, this happened on my job. Can you believe it? You know, well, in reality, the production guys, whether they can verbalize it right or not, maybe they don't have all the information they need to do their job right. Like, I'm going to use examples. I see a lot of things that, like, okay, a production manager gets this work order, but it doesn't have all the details or all the documentation. Well, how in the hell is he supposed to do his job, right? So there's got to be systems in place to buffer that relationship, right? So that's why we have salespeople can submit their stuff as approved, but the sales manager is the one that has to approve it, right? Because the sales manager is already on their team. So now when the production guys get it, it's the same every time. They have all the information. It was verified by the sales manager, right? Now, if it's not there, we don't have to yell at the salesman. We don't have to have that like bad conversation. It's a conversation with the sales. Hey man, you approved this. Why? How did it get approved? Like, all you got to do is go through the checklist. Is all this stuff here? You're not doing your job, right? Like, it's accountability, and it keeps this from happening between your sales team and your production team. Okay. The third thing there is leadership, right? Like, if you're hitting, let's say, 20 million, and you're in this could be a little different number for every market, right? But like, let's say you're in a town of 2 million. You know, if you're hitting 20 million in a market of 2 million, that's doing pretty good, right? If you're going to grow past that, you're probably going to have to think about another geography, right? Now you're talking about going to a place where you can't be two places at once. Now you got culture problems. And does anybody have 2 offices or more? Okay. When you started your second office, you ever have one office feel like we're kind of the ugly stepchild? Yeah. So you know, you get those sorts of things, and that is what, you know, it gets prevented from having the right leader, right? If you have the right leadership in place and you have the right systems in place to keep people connected, that helps with that, okay? So you really are going to need leaders if you're going to expand geography. And none of these things do you have to think until maybe you get to that point, right? But like, if you can start thinking about leadership when you're 1 million or process when you're 1 million, that's awesome. It's going to fast forward you, right? And who doesn't love speed, you know? And then when you get past the leadership thing, and you never get past anything, right? Even though you're at 20 million or 30 million and you're focused on your leadership right now, that does not mean you get to ignore your revenue, right? You're still going to have to focus on that. And you're still going to have to better your processes every day, right? But that's your bottleneck. Your bottleneck is changing. And then, you know, when you have a leadership bottleneck or you solve that leadership bottleneck, your next one is probably automation, right? Because if you can create triggers within your company to have some automation, it frees people's time up, right? And it creates consistency and speed, right, within your organization. And it actually helps the other 3 things get better. So I like this quote because whenever you start to, am I keeping time here, guys? I'll try to hurry. Whenever you start to get, you know, a little bit of success going, people start to say, hey, you know what, that guy's doing pretty good over there. I think I'm going to run this idea by him, you know? And you start getting a few ideas come your way or opportunities. And I think you always got to ask yourself, like, have I really maximized what I can do in roofing before I like go on this other venture, right? Because a lot of people, actually, they say it's one of the reasons that most entrepreneurs never reach their potential is because they get a distraction and they go on to it, right? Entrepreneurs love growth. That's just a reality. And so if we see a new exciting business, we tend to chase after it. But try to stay in your lane as much as you can. You know, studies show that, you know, guys that do a little bit of everything make less money than guys that specialize in something, right? Because the guys that specialize in something, they get to scale, right? And as soon as you start doing like other things, getting involved in other things, it takes your scalability away, your attention gets split, things like that, right? So just a tip. And Dimitri wanted me to leave 15 minutes for questions, so I apologize. I think we started a little late though too, so does anybody have any questions of?
When you started your second company, what, do you have one thing that you would say was a mistake that you made in the second time around? I mean, is there anything that you'd say, I probably wouldn't go that way, or I would not do this, or I would do this instead?
Well, I mean, I've got my obvious mistakes, like I got ripped off here or there, right? But, you know, a lot of it I still think was, when I started it initially, I think one of the big successes that we had is that we adopted a CRM, okay? And really started utilizing it, okay? Now, I went through some bad ones first, right? Like, when I looked at my first few CRMs, and I think they've gotten better and better through the years, right? It was very clunky. It gave me all the information I wanted, right? But it was so not user-friendly that nobody used it, right? So like, we had to end up switching, you know. One of the things that I think to think about is you gotta have stuff that's user-friendly. You know, if your team's not doing something, you got to look at yourself again, that ownership mentality, and go, why aren't they using it? Is this a me problem or is it a them problem? Usually if it's one like random guy, it might be a him problem. But like if it's all your guys like not taking the right photos or doing something in your process, you go, okay, what am I doing? What is it about our process? Take that responsibility so you can solve it, right?
Zach. Future, what is your lead flow process in your CRM?
Well, yeah, I mean, guys, I'm in AccuLink, so it's pretty much a controlled lead flow, you know, pretty much like anyone. It's lead, prospect, approved, completed, closed, right? We're building out with Salesforce right now because of things, and there's going to be slight changes, right, in that department, but it's not, that holds true through almost any platform.
Okay.
Discuss the sale of your business and maybe some pros or cons, or was it an easy transaction or was it extremely difficult?
Very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't a relationship that ended well, right? I had a partner, and we didn't end up in closing on good terms, so it was very difficult. I'll probably say that.
So, yeah.
If you have to start a business like tomorrow, what would be the best lead generation that you would put your money into?
What kind of business?
Roofing.
Relationships. Yep. That's the hard work, is like going and doing the relationship side, right? Like everybody wants to do the easy thing, which is maybe like Google or whatever, right? Like everybody can do that. It's easy. You just got to throw money at it, right? But how many people are doing the hard work? Go where people aren't, right? Don't be where the herd is, in my opinion. Like I said, there's people wildly successful using that, which is fine, right? That's not what I would do, okay?
Well, I don't know, relationship building.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What are the best relationships for you to build with people? Is it like real estate agents?
Well, so I'm going to say we call influence the influencer, right? So when people need a roof, where do they go? So in every market, that might look a little differently, but it might be a real estate agent, right, in your market, because when the home transaction happens, guess who finds out about it first? The real estate guy, right? And their needs are going to be a little different, but it might be an insurance agent, and it might be a B&I group, whatever. But relationships for us have been hands down the best way of acquiring business, okay, or opportunities.
How do you deal with, during kind of growth and revenue phase, like matching your labor with your growth? Are you just using sub crews and kind of?
We are. Are you using in-house or are you using 1099? A little bit of both? Okay, so I'm not against that. I like a lot of things about in-house, but I also don't like the way that, our regulations are set up in the, in the country, right? It's very anti-employee, and that's the reality. And I also don't like that it's hard to scale, right? Because in most of our markets, we're on a roller coaster, right? Especially if you're in a hail market, right? Like it storms and your demand's up here and you don't have enough people. And then next year, guess what? Everybody's got a brand new roof. So your demand drops down here, right? So like facilitating that with an in-house force is hard to scale up and down. Does that make sense? Like you already struggle enough probably with the sales department. I don't know. And look at OSHA, right? If you have an employee, you're on a whole new like liability level, right? The structure the government's put into place with regulation, right? Like all of the times the intended consequences aren't the actual consequences that happen, right? That's the reality.
Anybody?
What's Apple Roofing's budget for Google a month?
0.
Great.
$0. We don't. I have tried it before, and I tried it for 4 months. I thought when going into it, I didn't feel good about it, but God, I've always knocked it. I can't knock it till I try it. But you know what? You can't really know until you really track something, right? And what I found is the company that I used loved to give me fake results, right? So like the one that I really liked was I'm opening a new market that I haven't been in before, and I'm going to see what it does, right? There's a horrible waste of money. So I spend $0. We don't spend any money on Google.
0.
How important is branding versus advertising?
Very. So branding makes marketing cheaper and easier, right? So like when I think of a brand, if you the 3 things that are right really beneficial, and Jordan Belfort teaches this in straight line selling, right? They got to need or want what you offer, right? They've got to trust you or trust the company behind it and like the person selling it, okay? When you are a trusted brand in your community, you've already helped overcome, the third one, right? Of the people already assume that they like the salesperson that's coming because they like the brand, okay? So your brand's super important. I could speak to brand a lot. I think, color branding is one of the most important things, easy, simple. When you try to look at like wrap trucks, guys, like show me any truck, I'll tell you, here's my mindset on it. If it has a phone number, get it off. If it has a website, get it off. If it has what you do on it, get it off. What it does need is your name, really fucking big, right? Because when is the last time you drove by a service you needed, whether it's plumbing or whatever, and you saw, oh shit, I gotta write down this phone number? No, you don't do it. You're like, I'm gonna Google that shit later, right? You gotta remember the name. If you can get the name in their head, you won, okay? So I'll tell you what, one of the things, when I got a second opportunity to have a second business, right? I named it Apple Roofing because it was so easy to brand. And right, like the last company I had, people would be like, oh man, you roofed my house. Good to see you, man. Can't remember your company name. And I would always be like, how in the hell are they going to call me back if they can't remember who I was, right? So brand is super important, and it does. It makes your marketing cheaper. Anything else? Okay.
Everybody in this industry knows, there's a lot of turnover, sales guys, production guys, whatever. Yep. What do you feel like, and some of that's inevitably going to happen, but, sometimes
That's an excuse.
Okay. What do you feel like, is a good suggestion or an important factor to building, that strong core group of guys that you're going to be able to retain?
Don't do what everybody else is doing. right? Like the majority of our industry is like, I'm gonna call it renting people, okay? 1099 model. Like I said, a lot of guys are successful on it. You're gonna have the high turnover, right? You're gonna, because it's just a platform for them. They can be there, they can do their thing, but they can also go right over the next guy, right? If you create your own platform, think outside the box, right? We don't do that platform because you don't get the right culture. You can't integrate it into your company, right? You can't have process when people are running in and out the door. You can't. So, and look at the barrier of entry. What's the barrier of entry for them to go to another company? You've created competition for them to just go, oh, you know what? This guy says he's going to pay me more, right? Why? What's to stop them, right? They don't know that the guy doesn't have the ability to pay them or whatever, right? So in our model, right, we provide the salesperson every single thing they need to succeed in their job, including training, trucks, phones, laptops, iPads, fuel, hotels, whatever they need. It's all paid for, okay? Now the barrier to entry to go somewhere else is a lot higher, right? They're going to have to probably go buy a truck. They're going to have to go, do these things. It's a benefit. And they can still make better money, I think, over on my platform, right? We're doing 401k. We're doing health insurance, right? I think that model just creates you as a commodity. Why is your platform better? And you can't scale process in it because people don't adopt it. My opinion, guys. Not, like I said, more than one way to skin a cat, but that's mine.
Does that W-2 model with the trucks, iPads, and all that stuff, can you do that model once you reach like 3, 4, 5 million? Can you do this same model if you're just starting out from 1 to 4?
I started that way from day one, both times. So, I say yes. I mean, it is. Guys, if it's the easy way, it might not be the right way, right? I think the harder it is, it's probably the right thing. Take the hard route. That's what nobody else is doing. Anything else? Okay. Thanks, guys.